What's going on? It's JohnnyVTV Live. Join with me, my brand new co-host. Welcome to the new era of JohnnyVT Live, Joey Calz. What's up, baby? How we doing?
How we doing? We didn't do our shore get together like we planned to this summer. I think we both got pulled in different directions.
That's
Uh,
on you, bro. I was
it
ready,
is.
willing, and
I know
able.
you were
That's
ready.
on
I
you.
know. But the good news is I'm here. I'm here to do the show with you. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to do the show with you. I think our chemistry together is great, and I think over time people are going to start to see that.
You know what? It's kind of like you were always a regular recurring guest on Johnny VTV Live in the previous era, and obviously, like you said, the chemistry always worked well, and we always had a good rapport. So I think this is just going to be a great fit, and we're going to do a lot of great things. So let's get right into it, man. Preseason, we talked about this. I was so big on the Mariners. The Mariners were my team coming into the 2022 season, and I had them going very far. But it's funny because you did too. So now that we're almost at the home stretch here, where do you see the Mariners finishing? Do you think they can make a deep run in the postseason?
Well, the American League West is out of reach because the Astros right now have 93 wins. They have the second best record in baseball. I believe it's the second best record. But it looks like the Mariners are going to end that long playoff drought, which is something that the fans have really been looking forward to. And you got to crawl before you can walk. You and I, before the season, we love this team because we liked the right mix of players that they had. And you and I basically saw this coming. A lot of baseball nerds saw this coming. But Julio Rodriguez is the real deal. He reminds me of Juan Soto, reminds me of Miguel Cabrera. In Seattle, he probably reminds a lot of people of Ken Griffey Jr., but we'll pump the brakes on that. He's still got ways to go, but he's had an unbelievable season. And a lot of guys there have had great seasons. Ty Francis had a really, really good season. They correctly identified themselves as contenders or potential contenders at the trade deadline. And they did what, as a Yankees fan, always breaks my heart that Brian Cashman never does. They went out and they got the prize pitcher available at the deadline, Luis Castillo, who's been pretty good for them too. So I like this mix of guys that they have. You and I were on it at the beginning of the season, and it's worked for us into September. Like I said, right now they would only be a wild card, and they're still kind of on the bubble, and they would kind of need to put together another 4, 5, 6 wins here towards the end of September, I think, to really solidify themselves as a playoff team. But we both like what they're doing.
Yeah, so right now they're currently 5 games up on the Orioles. It's the Rays, Jays, and Mariners all jumbled up within a half a game at this wild card at this juncture. We were all over them, and I got to be honest, it really killed me because in the beginning of the season, April and into May, they were doing things that were driving me crazy. They were leaving tons. They were leaving small armies on the base paths. They couldn't bring them home. And then other times, one game they will be hitting really well, but weren't pitching, and vice versa. They couldn't put it together. They blew a few big leads. I think if that doesn't happen, they're seriously challenging the Astros for the AL West crown. I think they're a great team, and I had them making the ALCS. Even on FanDuel right now, a week ago, you could have got them at plus 430 to reach it. Now it's in the mid to high threes, which is still good value. I'd probably play it down to plus 275 or so. I think Seattle's got what it takes. They're heating up at the right time. Their pitching staff looks good. Eugenio Suarez is hitting the cover off the ball. Every other day, he's hitting a piss missile 450 out and somewhere into the outfield. And there's no reason why Seattle can't hang with anybody. We mentioned this off air. If Seattle draws any team not named Houston, I think they have a very good shot because Toronto, in my opinion, is the only team right now that can take out the Astros in a playoff series. I think they match up extremely well. If that happens, the floodgates are open, baby. I love to see Seattle in the ALCS, possibly even winning the AL. It's a good ticket to take right now.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off your point, I think I'm kind of with you here on Toronto now at this point in the season. But the Mariners, they pitch really well too. Logan Gilbert's had a good season. Robbie Ray's had a good season. Marco Gonzalez has had a good season. Told you they got Luis Castillo. It seems like those two teams, Toronto and Seattle, have the right blend of boppers and bats in the lineup that could outslug a team like Houston in a playoff series. And while they don't necessarily have a Justin Verlander or a Framber Valdez, they have good, solid starting pitching and good, solid starting pitching depth that does win playoff series.
Absolutely. And last time I checked, Luis Castillo was shoving 4 shutout innings, 7 punchies against the Padres. I mean, this guy has just taken this team into a different dimension. Now, when it doesn't matter who the Mariners face in the playoffs, they're throwing Castillo out there, who in any given night can go 7 shutout and strike out 10. Then you have Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray has been better as of late, but when he's on his game, he is tough to hit. The reigning AL Cy Young winner for a reason. He's got great strikeout stuff. Obviously, the control has always been an issue with him. But then you got guys like Logan Gilbert, who, if you're throwing him as a 3, that's really good. You got George Kirby. You got Marco Gonzalez, who's okay. And the bullpen has really pitched well, especially in the second half of the season. And with the way the offense is hitting, with Julio Rodriguez just running away with the AL Rookie of the Year. And I got to be honest, if he started what he's doing earlier in the season, I mean, he probably would be on the AL MVP ballot. It's hard to top what Judge is doing, but he probably would be on the ballot nonetheless, because this kid might very well go 30-30 in his rookie year, which is unbelievable. It's incredible. So I really think the Mariners have what it takes to make a deep run in this postseason.
Absolutely agree. And one last point, mentioned this before we started the program. That move to get Castillo reminded me a lot of what the Kansas City Royals did 6 or 7 years ago when they made their back-to-back World Series runs. They ended up getting Johnny Cueto. Now, did they have the strongest pitching staff going into the playoffs? No. But they had an exceptional bullpen, one of the best bullpens of any team that has won the World Series, I think, in the last 10 to 15 years. That was their asset. But that move to get Castillo, I think, reminded me a lot of that Cueto move, and that's ultimately what put Kansas City over the top. That's the kind of move that can ultimately put a team like Seattle, even if they don't win the American League West, if they win 90 games, 91 games to get into the postseason, that may be good enough.
Just as a reminder, preseason, I did have the Phillies beating the Blue Jays in the World Series, but I had the Blue Jays beating the Mariners in the ALCS. No joke. You can go back on NBC Sports Edge and read it. It's all well documented. This is not a after the fact. This is before the season. So just so everybody knows. But moving on here, let's get to the NFL. What did you think of week 1? Were you disappointed? Were you surprised? Did it live up to expectations that football's back? Where's your head at there?
For the first hour and a half, right until about 2:30, 2:45, I was like, this is the most miserable week 1 I've ever seen in my whole life. And then the witching hour
there, or would be a little dramatic.
It wasn't great football at the very start of the games. The first half of the first wave of games in week 1 was not great. However, once the witching hour came along, then we really, really picked it up. Then we really, 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 really got going. There were a couple of things I loved. I love the fact that Kansas City came out, and a lot of people are still riding that Cardinals wave from last season. And Kansas City came out, and they punched Arizona right in the mouth. And I wasn't a fan of Arizona going into the season. I think they're going to really struggle without DeAndre Hopkins, as you saw in week 1. I think a lot of people were surprised by the Giants' upset of the Titans. I necessarily wasn't. I think the Titans looked flat in their playoff game loss against the Bengals last year. I think the Giants had a lot to come out to play for. Brian Daboll in week 1. So Nick is very, very happy about this somewhere. There were a couple of shockers. I think the Rams coming out as flat as they did in that opening game against the Bills. I thought the Bills on paper were better. I thought they were the better bet, but I thought the Rams would probably be in the game a little bit more. That ended up not happening. And kind of the same thing with the Packers. And I think the Vikings, you'll probably agree with this as we go on here. I think the Vikings are a very good team. I think Cousins has been underrated now for a bit. I wouldn't necessarily call him an elite quarterback, but I definitely think he's in that upper third tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. That team's got a very good defense. And I think a lot of people were anticipating Aaron Rodgers, new contract, fresh look. They don't have the Devontae Adams issue hanging over them. But their offense looked very, very anemic. It was not good. And I think it was more of the Vikings and Justin Jefferson coming out and punching them right in the mouth. So Green Bay lost week 1 last year. They got blown out by the Saints, and they kind of rectified everything a little bit quickly. But I think it's going to be a little bit harder for them this year because they don't have a true number one wide receiver. So I think the Vikings right now look to be early on. I know it's only 1 week, but I think you may see the Vikings end up going toe-to-toe with the Packers, potentially at the top of the NFC North here for most of the season.
Yeah, my opinion here is it was flat, especially the first half. Most of these games just were not good. Simply put, I was stressing things like guys. One of the best, some of the best kickers in the NFL are missing chip shot field goals, just bad drops, poor execution. A lot of these teams did not look sharp, and it's fair. Not many play in the preseason, so I guess we could give them a pass here. The thing that stood out to me, to no surprise though, is Justin Jefferson, man. He was my offensive player of the year preseason. I wrote him up at plus 2,000. Leader in the NFL in receiving yards. The Vikings were a team I was so high on. I started really liking them and talking about them in May and writing them up in June, and then started seeing a lot of love for them, a lot of that action. So be it. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Love the way the Eagles looked. I think Nick Sirianni had a good balance.
I agree with that. I think they look very, very good too.
And I think we're gonna have some teams that are gonna be big players this year that may not necessarily have been thought as such in the past. I think the new wave is here with Minnesota as a team in the NFC North. That's the team I had winning this division from the preseason. I'm curious to see though for week 2, in particular, how teams like New Orleans bounce back. Even though they won, they did not look good until they had to turn it on in the fourth quarter. Green Bay against the Bears on Sunday night. And honestly, I guess even the Rams after that horrible Thursday night opening against the Bills, they get the lowly Falcons. So I'm really looking forward to see how those teams who did not put out good efforts come back to play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Saints are a very interesting team just because of Jameis. You get good Jameis and you get bad Jameis, right? But Jameis played well, I think, overall, and in that totality of the game against the Falcons. Trying to figure out what other games we haven't touched on from week 1. The Seattle-Denver game. That was a little strange because Denver had that game on them right on a platter for them at the end, and very inconspicuous decision-making there. I mean, you went out and you traded for Russell Wilson in the offseason for moments like that. And then in the winning moments of the game where the game is there available for the taking and you have Russell Wilson, you didn't use him. You went for the field. Just very, very mind-boggling decision. I still like that Broncos team. I like them going into the season, but I hope that kind of rectifies itself moving forward because when you coach scared and you coach conservative in this league, it never works out. You always got to go for the win. Bill Belichick has taught us that for many, many, many years.
I didn't like the Broncos coming into the season. Listen, you've known how long have I been saying? I think Russell Wilson's one of, if not the most overrated quarterback in this generation of football. I don't think he's as good as everybody thought. Even at his peak, I don't think he's as good as everybody thought. He was carried by an insane running game and one of the best defenses all time we've ever seen with the Legion of Boom. They even had an unbelievable front seven at the time. And listen, did he do some things after they left? Sure. Like, was he getting the help that he needed? No. But it turned on itself, and he wasn't able to do anything. And not that I think he's washed, but at the end of the day, Denver, to me, was never the team that stood out. I did not like Nathaniel Hackett. I have never liked Nathaniel Hackett. And I'm not saying because of the ridiculous decision, but I felt like he never really knew how to utilize players with Jacksonville, with Green Bay. He was always splitting carries, believes in platoons, and doesn't really dial up to use his best weapons at a high clip, in my opinion. But I'm not big on the Broncos, but the team in the AFC West on and the AFC and the NFL that I was huge on. I had a dream about it after I hit my second straight Super Bowl winner. That's the LA Chargers. And they got the Kansas City Chiefs in an early high leverage game on Thursday night. Might be the best one we see all year.
How do
Joey Calz.
how do you put the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers? How do you put that game? And this is a good nugget that I saw. The Chargers have beaten the Chiefs twice, right, since 2020 with Herbert, right? So this is a marquee type of matchup. Probably going to be two of the top 4 teams in the AFC by the time this is all said and done. Because I agree with your point on the Chargers. I think they're really, really, really good. And I'm not just saying that because I saw my friend Dave Meltzer before. So we'll get to that after. But how do you put this game on a Thursday night in week 2? Like the schedule makers, I disagree with this one. If we would have had this game in late September, week 4, early October, week 5 or 6, I think that would have been the perfect moment, because I think you needed to see Mahomes and Herbert do their thing for 3 or 4 weeks before you could really, really salivate over this matchup. And listen, Mahomes he only threw 5 touchdowns in week 1. And I have Justin Herbert on my fantasy team. So, I'm going to be following you, boy, all season long. But, I mean, come on. Week 2 on a Thursday night for this game? I mean, this got game of the year potential.
I'll tell you why. Because this is my opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but Amazon is the new Thursday night game. And I'm sure they wanted to come out with a bang, a splash play. They have an entire new broadcast featuring Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit. They wanted to get a big time game between teams like this. This is a splash play. This is the first Thursday night game of the year in a new era of who's hosting it. So I think that's probably what they were thinking. I'm with you. I would have rather liked to see this game on a Sunday night, maybe week 4, after we've seen a sample size, after there's been 3 games to kind of figure out what to make of these two teams. But in any case, listen, we got the Chargers catching 4.5, 4 in some cases. Right. There's been late action. And I got to be honest, man, I think this is Chargers all the way.
I'm with you.
Spread, money line.
I agree. You stole the words right out of my mouth. It's not that I dislike Kansas City, but I think what's going on there with that Chargers team, I really, really, really like. I think the line is appropriate. I think you could get away with 4. I could see it going to 3.5. I could see it going to 4.5. That seems like it's right about where it should be. But I'm with you. I'm on Chargers money line, buddy. Let's do it.
The reason being here, this is why I have to take the Chargers. I think these two teams are going to split, as most heavyweight division opponents tend to do, split throughout a 2-game set in the season. And the reason I think that they're going to win here is because they have the better roster. I mean, Mahomes is an unbelievable quarterback. I think you maybe can – I don't think Herbert is there yet, but I don't think Herbert is that far behind Mahomes. I don't think he's had the coaching around him to make him better. I think if you had Andy Reid, you might be singing a different tune about Herbert. But in any case, other than that, they have a much better talent base, in my opinion. I mean, even though
I was going to say, do you know the reason why the line is the way it is? It's because Keenan Allen's not playing. Now,
that doesn't
matter, because how many receivers did Justin Herbert target in week 1? The answer is 9.
Keenan Allen is not. I don't believe Keenan Allen is a line mover. I think people just saw Chiefs 3.5 and liked it, and that's where it's going. But it's come back down to 4. 4 is not a key number. 4.5, not a big difference. But I think ultimately there's enough weapons for the Chargers to get this done. Their defense, even if J.C. Jackson plays, he's kind of a coin toss at the moment. I still think there's enough pieces to stymie Patrick Mahomes. Khalil Mack is a difference maker. Trey Smith, the right guard, is highly questionable. That's a big one. They're going to be missing cornerback Trent Duffy, starting rookie. That's going to be a big deal. Herbert is going to be able to make these guys pay. Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler, the pass game, Guyton, Palmer, whoever it is, he can find a way to get this done. And I think the Chargers defense is much, much better.
I do think this game gets into the 30s, though. I think you're going to look at it like 34-31, somewhere around there. So right now I see the over and under is at 54. Even though it seems 50, I see 54.5 too on FanDuel. It seems a bit high, but I think these two teams, they came out scoring in bunches very early in week one. And I think that's going to continue here in week two. I don't think Mahomes is going to throw 5 touchdowns again, but I do believe, and I'm here with you, I believe the Chiefs are going to be the team playing catch-up in this game. So I could see the Chargers being up 2 touchdowns at some point in the second half, and you're gonna see Kansas City, I think, have to throw the ball in order to win this game.
So I would counter with 1 point. I like the under game total, 54.5. I think it's going to be slower scoring, and people don't want to take the under with these two in prime time. Rightfully so, but I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring in the first half. I think the Chargers are going to try and come out and run the ball a little bit more, chew up some clock. So not only am I taking the game total under as a result of a slow start in the first half, as well as some crippled injuries on offense that might impact the total. Harrison Butker is out for the Chiefs. Their star kicker is not going to play. So that could impact maybe some decisions on to kick the field goal as opposed to going for it on 4th down, which, could make or break this thing. But more importantly, I love the first half total under 27.5. In regards to what I just said, if you look at 3 of the last 4 matchups between these two teams, 3 of them have not even hit over 24 points. I think this is going to be an under. I think, like I said, it's a high leverage game. Everybody's going to come out a little bit tight, a little more hesitant. I don't think they're going to start airing it out till the second half.
I will trust my gambling guinea there. But we're both on the Chargers, though. We both like Chargers
money line. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And one more quick point I wanted to make about this game. Even if you're not interested in betting this game, if you like either of those quarterbacks to win MVP, go grab that ticket now. Because what's going to happen is the winner of this game is going to be in the driver's seat.
He's going to be the favorite.
Or second favorite. I mean, Mahomes, I think on PointsBet is the favorite. But let's say you like Mahomes and you can get him at FanDuel at plus 600. If you like that, you have to take Mahomes before the game, because if the Chiefs win, then Mahomes is going to have a significant step for at least the next couple months on the Chargers until they play later on in the season. I believe it's week 11. And historically, the MVP is the QB on a winning team that's a 1 or 2 seed with great stats. So obviously, if the Chiefs beat the Chargers and win the division, that means Mahomes would have the edge over Herbert, and Herbert almost has no chance to get it, and vice versa. Me, I like Justin Herbert. I would take Herbert for an MVP ticket before this game. And if the team that you pick the MVP for loses, you're not necessarily out of it. They do meet again, but this is just something to keep an eye on for. It's going to impact the MVP market significantly after Thursday night. Don't wait until after the game. Grab it before.
Go listen to the guinea. He knows what he's talking about.
All right. So one of the biggest games that I have on the slate, and I'm excited for it, is the Bucs Saints. What do you make of this? Saints are catching 2.5 at home. It was 3. Seen a lot of movement.
Yeah, the Bucs looked very dominant against Dallas in week 1, but I think that's a bit of a mirage only because Dallas's offense did not look good, and that was before Dak got hurt, right? So I think the Saints, like we mentioned before, they did not play a great complete game effort against the Falcons in week 1, yet they ended up pulling out the game in the end and ended up winning that game. Since Brady has gotten to Tampa Bay, it seems like the Saints have had the edge when it comes to the regular season meetings, right? So I look at this game and I'm seeing the Bucs are 3. That seems appropriate here. I think the Saints are going to come out better than they looked in week 1. And I think the Bucks, even though they are a good team and they can put points up on the board and they have our guy Lenny, I kind of like the Saints here. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game than people think, even though the over and under total is not as high as I thought it was. It's only 44, and I see 44 and a half on FanDuel because they always add the hook. But I like the Saints here. I do. I like it. I like them getting the +3 at home. I know it's Brady and the Bucks look good in week 1, but yeah, like I said, I think the Saints will come out here. They'll play a more complete game. I like the way that Michael Thomas looked in week 1. I wasn't sure how he was going to be coming right out of the gate, and he looked good, caught the 2 touchdowns. It seems like Jameis is going to have a legitimate number 1 target there. I thought them picking up Jarvis Landry in the offseason was a very shrewd move, very low key. It's not a great receiver, but the Saints needed kind of another underneath possession receiver, number 2 type with Michael Thomas. I think they got that. Yeah, so I like what Jameis has done so far here, and I like the Saints getting the 3 at home.
So I actually played this yesterday while I still was getting the Saints +3, and if for whatever reason people were hammering the Bucks and got them out to +3.5, I still would have took the Saints +3.5. There's people that like the Bucks, and
sure,
I understand it, but at the same time, not only did they lose key pieces on the offensive line heading into the year, but now their starting left tackle, Donovan Smith, is probably more likely than not to miss. Aside from that, there's a lot of injuries on the wide receiver front. Mike Evans is banged up, and he's historically not done well against New Orleans for the most part. Julio's a little banged up. I think with Godwin already out and Gage banged up, Julio probably will be fine to play. But at the same time, like it's already week 1 or week 2, and you're dealing with guys that are banged up. And you historically have not done well against New Orleans. In 3 of the last 4 regular season meetings, the Saints have scored 30 plus on this Bucks defense. And I understand Todd Bowles is running a different system than maybe they've had in the last couple of years, but I picked the New Orleans Saints to win the division. And so I think getting the 2.5 is tricky though. I probably wouldn't even bother taking the 2.5 if you want the Saints. Maybe the best you can do is wait until closer to kickoff because worst case scenario, it goes back up to 3 or it gets tighter. I think the Saints win outright at home. I think Jameis and the defense and everybody else is going to have a much better game. They were flat for the first 3 quarters against Atlanta, a terrible team. But at the same time, I think some of it could be attributed to just a little things are a little bit new under Dennis Allen, a new head coach. But I think they were just flat. They kind of assumed they had it in the bag. They weren't running anything special. And I think the defense is going to be much, much better. And I love New Orleans, like I said, to win the division. So I would take them on the money line. I took them on the spread. I'll probably take them on the money line. And again, they're plus 310, 330 to win the division. I would hammer that too because they were my pick, obviously. And I think they are very live this year, depending on how things go. I think they're a dark horse to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think they're going to make the NFC Championship game. I think they're a team to be reckoned with. They just haven't found their stride yet. And this is just not a good matchup for Tampa Bay, despite a good defense. I think Jameis Winston will be good enough, and I think Kamara and company, the defense, will get a lot better here. I'm all on New Orleans.
Yeah, I think the Saints are one of those pesky good value plays. I agree with mostly everything you said. And I was going to bring up the Chris Godwin injury before, but obviously I got to leave stuff for you to talk about as well. But I'm with you. I think the Saints money line, I think it's a good value play. I think the Saints right now to win the division is a good value play because I really don't see a lot in Atlanta or Carolina that inspires me. You're right. The Bucks, a lot of losses compared to last season. They're already dinged up. So yeah, there's a lot of sneaky momentum here for the Saints. Now, do I have them going that far? I don't know yet. I need to see more of a sample size from them. But I do think they are going to be contenders here with the Bucks for that division. I think it's a 2-team race, and I do think that they're going to be a playoff team. So I'm with you. The Saints have played the Bucs well. We have a sample size of that over the last couple of seasons. Give me the Saints here in week 2, and give me, like the Chargers, like you, pal, give me them on the money line.
So we're all on the dogs this week. I think the dogs are going to get back to barking.
Woof, 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 woof.
We got another dog that I like next week, or on Monday Night Football. We got the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles, 2 teams that are highly touted in the NFC, had pretty good week 1 victories. Who do you like in this one?
I like the Vikings. I love the way that team looked in week 1.
I wish we were disagreeing a little bit more, but I guess.
I knew we were going to agree on this too. I like the way, to be fair, again, like we said at the beginning, we both like the way the Eagles look to start the season. Right now, in that NFC East situation, you hate to see Dak injured, but I definitely think it takes the Cowboys out of it, because you look at the first half of their schedule, it's very difficult. You may be seeing a situation here in Dallas where this team is 1-5, 1-6, 2-5, sometime around the middle of the season. And then Jerry Jones is going to have a decision to make. Does he keep Mike McCarthy? Does he not keep Mike McCarthy? But I love the way the Eagles looked in week 1. I did not like the way Devontae Smith looked in week 1. I have him on my fantasy team. He gave me a giant goose egg after I had Miles Sanders last year. Miles Sanders had a good week 1. Terrible. But A.J. Brown looked awesome. Looked really, really good. But again, they played the Lions, right? And death taxes and Jared Goff covering his week 1 game, right? Happened.
Backdoor.
The Eagles and the Lions game, everybody was on the overhead. Eagles, Lions, everybody was on the Lions to cover the spread, have the Eagles win the game. Sure enough, that's exactly how they played out. Everything was pretty standard there. Don't want to talk more about the Vikings than I did already before, but they're getting 2 right now, which is that's a very, very low total for me. So if that's the case, I'm just going to bet them on the money line, and you're going to bet them on the money line too. What I missed before is that I love their hiring of Kevin O'Connell as head coach. I think he was the right philosophical fit for the talent that is on that team right now, and I think he's got the opportunity here to really take this team to the next level. And what you saw with Justin Jefferson in week 1, he exploded. And he's going to have 5 or 6 weeks this season at least where he explodes for that much. So having bet him for Offensive Player of the Year, I couldn't have loved that move for you more, buddy. Dalvin Cook did not look great in week 1 against the Packers, so I think he's going to look a little bit better here. I'm with you with the Vikings, and I'm going to bet them on a money line, and I know you are too.
You know something? I really have a tough decision here, because thinking about it, the Vikings and the Eagles, I both love to win their divisions. And I had the Vikings going further than the Eagles. I don't necessarily believe in Philadelphia. They almost blew a 17-point lead to Detroit. They took their foot off the gas. They let the Lions back in it. Minnesota looked good. The issue I have with them, I don't think their defense really should have played as well as it looked. Christian Watson for the Packers up to 75-yard walk-in tutty. Like, come on. Ultimately, though, I probably would just take Minnesota outright, like you said. I like the over. If you can get it at 51 or less, I would take the over. I think it's going to be high scoring. I like Minnesota's team total over 24.5. I think they're going to put up about 27 points. Justin Jefferson's not going to be coverable. He's just not. I think Jefferson follows up his 184-yard, 2-tutty performance with about 120 and another tutty on Monday night in prime time. Cousins will have a big one as long as that offensive line can keep him clean. If not, game over. That is just not going to happen, because the Eagles, if one thing they do well, is control the trenches. But I like Minnesota here. I would take them on the money line, keep the 2. If anything else, maybe throw them in a teaser and get that total up to +8. I like them there. I think Minnesota finds a way to pull this out on the road. I just think they're the better team, to tell you the truth. And I think Justin Jefferson's going to be unguardable. Player props are not out. Player props are not out yet, Joe. So I would look at the Jefferson receiving yard total as well as the A.J. Brown receiving yard total. Those two gentlemen are going to go absolutely wild in week 2 in prime.
My only concern moving forward with the Eagles is I still think Jalen Hurts is running a little bit too much. I think he had 18 attempts in week 1 and a mix of design plays and scrambles and whatnot. But I like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good fit with that talent around him. But they got to protect him if they want to win that division. And I think right now they're in the driver's seat to win that division. I do. I'm with you on there too.
Yeah, listen, I'm 100%. We're 100% in agreement here. Vikings win the division. This is a good litmus test early because these could be two heavy hitters in a weak NFC. Especially if the Rams don't get it together. I think they will. I think they're going to have a good showing against Atlanta. The Bucks, who knows about Tampa Bay? Dallas is probably done. The Packers, who knows what's going on with them? This is going to be maybe two of the best teams in the conference, and I think we're going to learn a lot on Monday night.
I do.
Last but not least, here we got the Miami Dolphins catching 3.5 at Baltimore. If you forget, last season the Dolphins beat the brakes off the Ravens 22-10. What's your lean or pick for this game?
Well, the Ravens played my putrid Jets in week 1, and like I thought they would, they totally dominated the game. The Jets never had a chance. The Jets are going to be bad this year, and they're going to be really, really bad. I like the way the Dolphins looked in week 1. And a little bit, I think, is I don't think the Patriots are going to be nearly as good as they were last year. I think this is the year that they missed the playoffs, and I really think this is the year where you're going to get a lot of shuffling done in New England. But I think this is going to be a really, really sneaky, just good, fun game to watch. I don't have a great read on this game because I do like the Dolphins, but the Ravens at home. This is one of the two games this week I have no read on. I'm leaning Baltimore, but laying the 3.5 with them kind of gives me a little bit of a pause. So we're going to begrudgingly take the Ravens with the spread, even though I think the Dolphins are a good team, and I like the way that they used Tyreek Hill in week 1. I like the way Tua looked in week 1. I think that team's got a lot of balance. I don't think they're going to win the AFC East, but I do think they're wild card contenders. And I think with the way everything has played out so far in the AFC North, with Deshaun Watson probably not going to play for the Browns this season, the Steelers kind of in flux, bunch of injuries. TJ Watt's not going to miss the whole season, but he's going to miss a significant chunk of the season. And I think the Bengals are good, but it seems like the AFC North, that window is open for the Ravens to possibly be the class of the division. So Miami beat them last year. I'm going to begrudgingly take the Ravens here. Money line, you probably get not great value and better value, and probably taking them with the spread here. So I will begrudgingly take the Ravens with the spread, even though I am not in love with that decision.
All right, this is an easy pick. I already bet it. I bet it a couple of days ago. Miami Dolphins plus 3.5 on the spread. It was 4.5. It was 4.5. It's getting bet down a little bit, but it's holding firm at this 3.5. Listen, I'm not even going off the reference that they beat them last year. It's a totally different team. But one thing the Dolphins defense did, and I think they're going to take a look at that game tape, they blitzed Lamar. Their safeties were all over the place. I think they're going to replicate that game for him and keep him uncomfortable. The one thing that worries me about Baltimore, and they showed this against the Jets, they looked flat. They looked like they didn't care. Lamar did not look good despite his box score. He had a few nice touchdown throws. He did not run, though. That's where his bread and butter is running. And I wonder how much of this is going to stick throughout the season with the contract hanging over his head. But I think matchup-wise, the Dolphins can cover this outside of a field goal. I don't necessarily know if they'll win, but let me tell you something. The Baltimore Ravens just lost Kyle Fuller, their corner. He's on IR. He's done. Marcus Peters, we don't know if he's going to play. LT Ronnie Stanley might not play, and they lost his backup against the Jets. So the Ravens are wearing a little bit thin. They just don't look like they're ready to come out swinging yet. I think Miami is in a good opportunity to go on the road, handle a physical Baltimore team, and cover 3 points. Slightly live for the underdog, upset money line.
Yeah, no, sure. I agree with that. I think the Dolphins are a very good team. I think they're definitely a lot of frisky, good dog bets this week. That I will agree with. And there was one more game that I did want to get to. If you have some time, do we have some time? Yeah, we do have some time. We should talk about the other Monday night game because there are 2 Monday night games this week because there was only one to start week 1 this year. The Titans and the Bills game. Very, very interesting because the Bills here are the big favorites. I see -10. FanDuel, they're 9.5, right, which is a big spread. But there's a very realistic chance here that the Titans are 0-2 to start the season and may not necessarily be the worst thing in the world because nobody in that division won in week 1. But considering that they were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, to start out of the gate 0-2 here, because I do like the Bills in week 2, I wanted to get your opinion on this game quick, Johnny.
Real quick, if I was going to bet it, I'd probably take the Bills outside. I would bet the Bills at 9.5. I don't love it at 10. I don't hate if it's 9.5. But other than that, man, I don't like these big spreads. Always backdoor things could happen. It's in Buffalo for the second year on a Monday night. King Henry ran wild against them. I don't know if it's going to happen the same way. I wouldn't be surprised. I get worried because I'm not saying King Henry's skill set is diminished or he's not the same running back he's been. The thing that worries me, though, is the loaded boxes that he's going to see. And the Titans just aren't good. It was a fluke number 1 seed last year. I don't love what I'm seeing from Tennessee. They lost their best player on defense or outside of Jeffrey Simmons. So the Titans are not desirable. They're not going to be good. I said it that I think Jacksonville could be the second team in the AFC South this year. So
AJ Brown. Hey. Go on.
I do like Buffalo if I was going to pick a side, but ultimately I'm probably off it. I'm going to look to attack to see what the player props have. Maybe a Josh Allen total tutties. I think if you can get him over 2.5 passing tutties, I'd probably look at that before I play a side.
Yeah, I like Diggs props for this game too, if we're talking about player props. But the point I wanted to make is I think the Titans are an entirely different team without A.J. Brown. I don't think a lot of people realize how important A.J. Brown was to the success of this offense. And Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry, so he's always going to be good in his own right. But I think losing A.J. Brown, it's a big loss more so for Ryan Tannehill. And I think Tannehill has had a couple of good seasons here in Tennessee, but I think this is the first season where you're going to really start to see him struggle a little bit, and you kind of saw it in week 1.
Absolutely. A.J. Brown loss cannot be stated enough. I do think it's going to be a rough season for the most part in Tennessee. So, I do like that Stephon Diggs. I agree with that. He is a catch machine. Hopefully, if you can find some early action and take Diggs, I would definitely play anything over 5.5. 6.5, you're getting a little dicey. Depends where what the vig is, but I would look at 6.5 as well because I think they're going to be throwing a lot. I think they're going to be scoring, putting up some points. And Diggs, they love to get him in these situations where he's catching short, intermediate, or deep. So that is a good look as well. As we're wrapping up, let's get to the gambling and these best betting trends. We touched on it already. Justin Herbert MVP to grab that before the Thursday night game. If the Chargers win and I'm picking them to win, that number will not be there. Herbert probably goes from plus 750 maybe to like plus 450, maybe plus 500. And after 2 weeks, you're going to have to wait just to see how it goes. I think Herbert is the move here to take. I think he's in for a huge season. I picked over 5K yards, over 40 passing touchdowns. And I think winning the division is going to start by winning on Thursday night. And secondly, Arizona Cardinals. You could still find a plus 5.5 out there against the Raiders. You know my motto. I always take the road team getting 5 or 5.5. Despite how pitiful this Cardinals team looked, I'm not comfortable laying 5.5 with the Raiders. I think they're going to come back, bounce back, and show some better stuff, especially if J.J. Watt plays. I don't love Kyler Murray. I was not high on the Cardinals last year. I was even lower on them this year, even though Nick Durst was all in on them. I think the Cardinals do cover.
He loves Kyler Murray. Loves him. I can't.
If it's 5 or 5.5, take it. Because remember my saying, That road team getting 5.5 as a dog is 10-1 ATS in the last 11, dating back to last year. So definitely looking to play that Arizona number if it remains there. You could still find a 5.5 out there. Don't hate the 5 either.
I don't hate either
So,
of those plays, bud.
That being said, we have to acknowledge the Emerge Player of the Night, brought to you by Emerge Sports Group, our boy J-Hen. Justin Jefferson, career high receiving yards, led the league last week with 184 on 9 grabs for 2 tutties. He's got another butter matchup in week 2 on Monday night against the Eagles. Does Big Play Slay hang with him? Does Chauncey Gardner-Johnson hang with him? No, they don't. James Bradbury? No, I don't think so. I think Jefferson, as long as Kirk Cousins has time, I think he is going to have another game over 100 yards and a score. I do love me some Justin Jefferson, my offensive player of the year. Joe, bring us home here. What's your final thoughts heading into week 2?
Like I said, it was a very slow start to week 1, but it really, really picked up. It was great. I'm hoping my Jets get a week 2 win against the Browns, but the Browns came out and eked that game at the end. I think the Giants and Panthers game is a game to watch here because New York has been desperate for a good football team for a long time, and there's a very realistic chance that the Giants are 2-0 on top of the NFC East by the end of week 2. So Nick somewhere, he's not in love with Daniel Jones. I'm not either, but he's got the opportunity to root for a first-place team here, and just wanted to mention that you sent your best wishes to my mother. She's been in the hospital, but we're holding very, very strong and steady over here. She's doing a lot better. I appreciate all your support, pal. I'm very, very happy to do this with you, and I can't wait to watch how the regular season plays out doing this with you week to week.
100%. I would say for this upcoming week, I'm just so intrigued to see how these divisional matchups are going to go because these dictate a lot of markets in the futures early. And, we're on the underdogs this week. I'm very curious to see how that goes. And also the teams that are catching 10 points, 9 points, 9.5. I want to see off a loss how these teams respond. I want to see how Denver responds. I want to see how Atlanta responds, how the Rams, how the Cowboys, even without Dak Prescott. I want to see what we're in store, the Packers. I think it's important. It's going to set the tone, and we're going to know what to expect for the rest of the season. That being said, be sure to follow us on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in. John_JohnnyVTV. He's at Joe Calabrese 1. Be sure to tune in every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Have a good evening.